Welcome back to Plants Not Plastic. I'm Nikita, and today we're making rich and zesty mushroom stroganoff. This stroganoff has wonderful, unique flavor and is packed with a variety of mushrooms that bring complexity and great texture to the dish. It's quickly become one of my favorites because it's easy to make, tastes great, and can be stored in the fridge for weekly meal planning. So here's everything you'll need to make this recipe. I'll also leave everything in the description box below, along with a link to the blog post with some welcoming photos and a printable recipe card. Starting off, for those of you who might be newer to cooking and want some guidance on how best to prep these ingredients, I'm going to give you some tips. If you just want to dive right into the recipe though, I'm going to leave timestamps in the progress bar and you can just go ahead and skip. So I use a mix of mushrooms to amp up the flavor and add a variety of texture to my stroganoff. Portobellos are going to give a heftier, meatier texture, where shiitake has stronger flavor and a softer, more buttery texture. And then cremini are like my mushroom rock. They are the mushroom that I can always count on for great flavor at a lesser price. I'm personally not a fan of white mushrooms. I don't really think that they add much flavor to the dish, so I don't use them. But any mix of mushrooms will do, and even if you only have access to one, the dish will still come out great. Also, if you're going to use shiitake, just keep in mind that the stems can be eaten, but they're chewy. So I take them out, but if you don't mind the texture, you can go ahead and leave them in. As for leeks, they're a perfect pick for a mushroom-centric dish because they're woody and mild and enhance and highlight that good mushroom flavor. But if you don't have leeks on hand or available in your area, shallots are mild too and pair great with mushrooms. I've even got a recipe with those two paired together in a couple of weeks. Or there is nothing wrong with the tried and true flavor of the cheap and easy to find onion. There are two ways to cut leeks. For either, start by cutting off the fibrous leaves right where the color and texture changes from darker green and rough to lighter green and softer. For the first method, which is my preferred one, because it just uses less kitchen tools, you'll cut an X through the shaft and then take it to your sink to rinse it while pulling back the layers to remove any sand or grit. The other way is to slice it first into rounds and submerge those little pieces in water, and then any sand and grit will drop to the bottom of your bowl. Again, I like the first one because I get to just use my knife in the sink rather than adding a bowl to the mix. Okay, so for the veggie prep, you're going to wash your mushrooms well and cut them up any way you'd like. Sliced, diced, cubed, or otherwise. You just want to make sure that your pieces are about the same size and that you've got a bowl that's actually big enough to fit everything. Next, you'll prep and wash your leeks and mince your garlic. Then you'll compost your refuse and we're ready to cook. Start by softening your leeks and garlic over medium heat for 2 to 4 minutes, and then add all of your mushrooms and cook them down until they've released their water, reduced, the water has cooked off, and the bottom of the pan is just beginning to brown. While your mushrooms are cooking, mix together vegetable broth, soy sauce, nutritional yeast, the optional Worcestershire sauce, if you're using it, and flour to make a roux. You can also start a pot of water for your pasta at this point. Once you do have that bit of browning, you'll add your thyme and paprika and cook them for an additional minute or two until the pan has a good amount of browning but nothing is burning. You'll stir your roux on the side one more time and then add it to your pan to deglaze. Unstick anything from the bottom of the pan before adding your plant milk and bringing everything to a boil. While you're waiting for that boil, make sure you're managing your pasta and mix together a quick slurry of cornstarch and a little bit of water. When it does start to boil, you'll add your slurry slowly, stirring constantly to thicken the sauce. Once it's gotten thick, you'll turn off the heat, and the last thing to do is add the dill and the optional Dijon mustard, stirring everything in before serving it up over some pasta for a taste test. This stroganoff is rich, creamy, and bold. If you're a lover of mushrooms, it's delicious and tangy and has great texture. So I've already mentioned a couple of optional additions for this recipe, but I want to repeat them and then share a few more. Any of these changes or additions that you make are going to add more flavor complexity, but like I said before, this recipe is also great in its simplest form. The leeks and a mix of mushrooms is preferred, but creminis and a yellow onion will serve you just fine. I always make this recipe with Dijon mustard because it's an easy addition that adds a little more acidity and flavor to the dish. And you can also add vegan Worcestershire sauce for some unique flavor and more of that same acidity. I did work pretty hard to come up with a stroganoff that felt rich and creamy without actually being heavy. But I will say that if you're looking to add true richness to this recipe, skip the cornstarch and plant milk and add a half a can of coconut milk to the dish instead. And then last but not least, if you are cooking this for a fancy meal like a date night or a dinner party, you can use a half cup less of vegetable broth when you're making your roux, and instead use a half cup of Chardonnay, even a cheap one, to deglaze your pan after you've cooked down the mushrooms and spices. Make sure that you cook off the alcohol and then follow the rest of the steps to make the dish. This will add even more depth of flavor and sophistication to the recipe. And Chardonnay pairs great with mushrooms, so you could even serve up the rest of the bottle with dinner. For how it stacks up against an alternative, I'm not going to do a breakdown for the sake of time, but you can check out the full nutrition label on the blog that links out to Chronometer. This recipe, though, is going to be just like my others. When comparing it to a non-vegan or a vegan processed option, it will very likely cost you less to make, have more fiber, and you'll get to eat more of it for the same number of calories. So that's it for today's recipe. If you try it out, let me know in the comments. You can also subscribe to my blog for recipes right to your inbox and connect with me on social media for day-to-day content. Also, if there's a recipe that you would like to see from me or one that you have been craving and haven't found a recipe for, let me know that as well because I'm always looking for new ideas. And don't forget to subscribe, click the bell, give this video a thumbs up, and come back next time. Bye!